Welcome to Comic Power. I am your host, Comic Killer 72. Welcome to Wicked Wednesday, where we discuss all the new comics that's coming out this week. Every Wednesday is like Christmas for us nerds because that's when the new comics come out. These are my recommendations for the best books to pick up on Wednesday. But here's some other information first. Wonder Woman. DC finally has a movie that is critically and commercially successful. Man of Steel, Batman, Superman, and Suicide Squad all had their issues, but Wonder Woman is universally acclaimed. Hopefully this crushes the myth that female-led characters in comic book movies don't sell. Critics always point to Elektra or Catwoman as an example, but those were just horrible movies. It doesn't matter the gender of who the lead is. I wasn't sold on Gal Gadot when she was first announced to be Wonder Woman, but she's really grew on me. I'm starting to really like her. She has overperformed and I'm proud of her. It's 50-50 if I have time or not if I'm going to do a Wonder Woman movie review because I'm already slightly behind my publishing schedule. We'll see. If you missed it, I recently did a new top 10. It was the top 10 Asian comic book characters of all time. Top 10 lists are always controversial because there's someone who feels slighted about a character that they like that's left out. This would be no exception. My pick for number 1 is sure to be controversial, but I think I have solid ground on why I picked them. To go back and watch that, go to my homepage and then click on playlist, and then under playlist, click on the top list and you'll see it there. If you don't like the list, then post your own top 10 list in the comment section. Your opinions and feedback matters to this channel. But for now, we're going to talk about New Comic Day. That's what you came here for. And DC Comics has given us Bane Conquest number 2. This reunites Chuck Dixon and Graham Noel, who are the creators of Bane in the first place back in the early 1990s. Of the Batman characters created in the last 25 years, he's by far the most popular. This is part 2 of a 12-issue maxi series. And yes, Batman will show up. I'll have some of that. Speaking of Batman, we have Batman number 24, and here's another classic cover with him on the cover with Catwoman, and they just can't resist each other, can they? This incarnation of Batman is written by Tom King, and boy, he rose through the ranks real fast. He was writing stuff like The Sheriff of Babylon and The Vision, and now he's graduated to writing Batman, the most popular comic book character of all time. What a life, huh? The Catwoman character will return to live action in the movies and a Gotham City Sirens movie opposite Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Margot Robbie will return as Harley Quinn, but the other two roles have not been cast at this moment. There's plenty of speculation of who those roles are going to go to, but I'll talk about that in another video. Here's the blood red cover B version of Batman number 24, by the way. It's another great work by Tim Sale. Next up is more Batman with Dark Knight 3, The Master Race number 9 of a 9-part miniseries. This is written by comic legend Frank Miller, and he's just a pure genius when it comes to comics. He's probably one of the top 5 creators in comics of all time, and he's earned the right to do whatever he wants to do. This finale issue is going to have plenty of variants, including this Jim Lee sketch variant shown here. Jim Lee still can draw his ass off, man. He's just great. As an artist, not as a writer. He sucks as a writer, but he keeps trying anyway. But his art is always gorgeous. Next up is Deathstroke number 20. This is the epilogue after the Lazarus contract, which was a crossover with the Teen Titans and now an animated cartoon. The cover B version is superior over the cover A, so I would get the cover B. That looks spectacular. Slade Wilson, baby. Next up is Harley Quinn number 21. Her title is the ultimate mix of hijinks and humor. Amanda Conner is still doing the covers and she's writing it. The Frank Cho cover B variants look fantastic. Man, they are really working. This was a great decision to hire him to do the cover Bs. They look just grand. I would love to see a complete book with Frank Cho drawing her in this style. Next up is Superman 24, and this is one of the best looking Superman covers I've seen in a long time. The plot revolves around that Superman may have to fight his son and he's going to refuse. My reviews are non-spoiler, so you'll have to pick this up to get the details of what's going on. Next up, let's see what Marvel is up to, and that's going to be The Amazing Spider-Man number 28. They're not overstuffing Spider-Man with variants. We got one cover A drawn by Alex Ross, which looks amazing. Go ahead and get this because this is what they're supposed to be doing. Next up is The Champions number 9, and everything about this series seems like they're setting it up as an animated series on television in the future. Viv Vision may be a breakout character. She's the one shown here in color. She made her first appearance in Vision number 1 back in 2015. Next up is Iceman number 1. This is a good idea why this character has a book. He's a founding member of the X-Men, so he's been around for a long time and there's plenty of backstory. He's also a Omega level mutant, which means he's one of the most powerful characters in the X-Men universe. And of course, they're going to try to overdo this with variants, but I give them a pass for the hip hop variant because it looks so cool. You got the Adventures of Bobby Drake. It's basically paying homage to B.O.B., the Adventures of Bobby Ray, shown here. The corner box variant looks pretty cool as well. I would go ahead and get one of these, whatever it might be, as long as you're getting it for cover price. Next up is Jessica Jones, number 9. This character is more popular than ever because of her successful television show on the Netflix web series. They're continuing the David Mack watercolor covers. They look fantastic. I think I need to find another word besides fantastic. I'm wearing that one out, ain't I? I am getting sick of the variants, but they have a very interesting looking one here. It looks like a Pulp Fiction type comic, but with artificial aging that's made that way. That looks pretty cool. I'd pick up one of these. Next up is Old Man Logan, number 21, as well as number 22, which are going to second prints. They're basically doing a recap of Logan's life and all the adventures he had. The character is supposed to have been born in Canada in the mid-1800s, so he's supposed to be about 160, 170 years old. So there's just a tremendous amount of things which you can do with the Wolverine character. Marvel's going to do legacy and bring their iconic characters back to ground zero, which is very much needed because casual viewers have no idea what the heck is going on. There's people that haven't read a comic in years that are going to the comic store and figuring out, hey, Wolverine is a chick now? Because they don't know that X-23 is Wolverine, and it just gets confusing. So when they do legacy and fix this, it'll make much more sense to casual viewers. Next up is Darth Vader number 1. This is a reboot to number 1, so it's volume 2 number 1. Volume 1 stopped at issue 25, and they kind of spinned it off and started a Dr. Aphra title. But Darth Vader is right there with Batman as one of the greatest fictional action sci-fi fantasy characters ever created. So a rebooted Darth Vader number 1 is going to sell twice as much as a Darth Vader 26 would have. People see that number 1 on there and they just fall in love. They just have to have it. Marvel has a tremendous amount of quality on their Star Wars projects. So the main Star Wars, Dr. Aphra, all the miniseries as well, they all look tremendous. So is a number 1 for Darth Vader necessary? Probably not, but for marketing purposes, it's going to sell better. So here we are. Next up is Spider-Man Deadpool number 18. Speaking of a series that should not exist, this is it. You should have a mini-series starring Spider-Man Deadpool teaming up, but not for the long term. These characters have nothing in common. Their philosophies are so different. They would never get along much longer than 4 issues. But this is Spider-Man, Marvel's most popular character of all time, matched with Deadpool, their most popular character right now. So this is going to happen whether it makes sense or not. Next up is Secret Empire, Brave New World, number 1 of a 5-part miniseries. This is just an excuse so they can team up Namor, Captain Marvel, the Black Panther, Miles Morales, and some other characters, and a tie-in to the Secret Empire storyline. If you're all in on the Secret Empire storyline, then you have to have this too, so it'll all make sense. They don't have to stretch it out like this, but they do because they want to sell more books and they know they got you. Sorry if I sound like I'm bored with Marvel, but I am tired of all the events and made up crossovers. I'm just exhausted. I believe that Marvel's marketing team and not the creative team is in charge, and that's what the problem is. Just to prove what I'm talking about, they're doing a whole series of Mary Jane Watson variants. This is Peter Parker's longtime girlfriend in the comics, and she was played by Kristen Dunst in the movies, the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. So Marvel is giving us Avengers number 8 Mary Jane variant, which is paying homage to Avengers number 57 in 1968. This is the first appearance of the Vision. Next up is Black Bolt number 2, where Mary Jane is recreating the famous scene where she says, "Face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot." She first uttered this famous catchphrase back in 1966 in Amazing Spider-Man number 42. There's also a Mary Jane variant for the Champions number 9, Iron Fist number 4, and Daredevil number 21. In terms of art, some of these covers actually do look pretty cool, but the fact that they're doing variant covers for Mary Jane Watson on comics that have nothing to do with Spider-Man is just head-scratching. It doesn't make any sense. The character does not appear in those comics that way, and it's all about the money. I apologize if I offended any hardcore Marvel fans, but man, Marvel is just out of control. Next up is our report on independent comics and small publishers. First up is Stained, number 2 of a 5-part miniseries from 451 Media Group. This is the publisher that is tied to director Michael Bay, so there's speculation that these books may be turned into movies in the future. This story follows a female action hero that looks similar to the Terminator meets RoboCop. Next up is Pestilence, number 2 from Aftershock Comics. This is a story of the Middle Ages tale about the Black Death, but instead of disease that's killing people, it's actually zombies. Next up is Riverdale number 3 from Archie Comics. This is an update of the Archie universe where they update the characters to the 21st century. This is a tie-in to the live-action show on the CW. Next up, and also on Archie Comics, is Marvel Comics Digest #1, and you're probably scratching your head wondering why is Marvel publishing on Archie's imprint. Well, this is a partnership between Marvel and Archie where they're making a digest that are reprints of Marvel's vast catalog over the last 50 plus years. They are promising to print this only one time, so it could be a nice collector's item. You can find this in places like grocery stores where you might not normally see comics. And Archie Comics have been selling their digest for years this way. You've seen them at the checkout aisle at grocery stores and pharmacies. So Marvel wants a piece of this action, but they're going through Archie since they're already established with the network there. And they promise only one printing. When they're gone, they're gone. Next up is The Unsound #1 from Boom Studios. This is written by Cullen Bunn, who's now the master of horror. I think he's taken that title. This output is nothing short of phenomenal in the horror genre. This is part 1 of a 4-issue miniseries. I believe the cover B version is superior to the cover A, so I would get the cover B if you have a choice. Next up, Dynamite Entertainment is giving us a lot of choices, including Ash vs. Army of Darkness #0. They're selling this for just $1, so there's no risk in picking this up. There'll be variants that cost more, but the regular cover is just $1. Next up is Game of Thrones Clash of Kings #1. This is a comic series based on the George R.R. Martin TV show. A lot of the fans of the show will be picking up the book, so this could be a big seller and a long-term sleeper in terms of investing, but there will be a gazillion variants on it, so I don't know which one's going to break out. Next up from Dynamite Entertainment is Gore Orgasmageddon #1 of a 4-part miniseries. This is based on the shock rock heavy metal band Gore, and the word subtle is not in their vocabulary. This will probably only translate to hardcore people that love the group. People that never heard of them will be like, WTF. Next up is Kiss Vampirella #1 of a 5-part miniseries. And it makes sense to cross over these two properties. Gore is way out there on the fringes, but Kiss and Vampirella have been pretty mainstream for the last 40 years. Vampirella is a fictional character that first appeared in Vampirella magazine in 1969. Kiss is a real-life rock band that formed in New York in 1973. Their most famous member, of course, is Gene Simmons, who plays the role of a demon who breathes fire. So yeah, these two properties were just made for comic books in the horror genre, or should I say campy horror. They don't care, they're getting paid. Next up from Dynamite Entertainment is Mighty Mouse #1. If you remember the cartoon back in the day like I do, then this is probably good for picking up for nostalgia purposes. They're keeping the original design and look of the 1940s cartoons. It's basically a mouse that's based on Superman. That's all it is. They're bringing in some heavy hitters to do the art as well. Cover A is done by Alex Ross, and this version right here is drawn by Neil Adams, so that's pretty cool. Next up is the Hasbro Heroes Sourcebook #1 from IDW Comics. The toy company Hasbro has other properties besides the Transformers and G.I. Joe that they want to turn into movies, like Rom and Action Man and the Micronauts. But casual fans are not very familiar with these characters, so this is a way of explaining them. Who they are, what they do, what their motivation is, and that makes sense. This is part 1 of a 3-issue series explaining that, but I don't know about the price point, $5. That's pretty high for a source book. Next up is Jazz Maynard #1 from Magnetic Press. This is the story of a jazz musician who's trying to find his sister who has been lost in the sex slave trade. The advanced previews had a feel that felt like John Wick or something like that. I would check this out. Our friends at Oni Press are offering 2 #1s this week, and they're selling both for just $1 a piece. The first one up the bat is Another Castle #1, which is a fantasy epic with some King Arthur imagery. And the next one is Courtney Crummin #1, which is a magic-based story starring a little girl. Both of these properties have been published before. This is just only taking you back to square one on who they are. It's no risk at $1 a piece. Next up is Solar Flare #1 from Scout Comics, which is going to a second print. It's just a story of what happens to the world after a solar flare knocks out all communications and satellite. Well, we'll be screwed, of course, because we're so dependent on technology. Next up is Heathen #4 from Vault Comics. This is one of the biggest surprise hits of the year. It's a story of a female Viking warrior named Adis who's seeking revenge against the god King Odin. It started out as a Kickstarter project and it made its way into mainstream comics. Next up is the Speculation Pick of the Week. And that's going to be Baby Teeth #1 from Aftershock Comics. It's the story of Sadie Ritter, who's 16 and 9 months pregnant, and her baby is going to be the Antichrist. that will unleash eternal suffering on all mankind. I would say she has a dilemma on her hands, don't you think? What makes this book so highly anticipated is that it's written by Donny Cates, who's also the author of God Country and Redneck, which both have been major hits for Image Comics. Aftershock is also a creative-owned imprint, so can lightning strike 3 times with 2 different publishers with the same writer? I would say yes. Donny Cates has a real talent for taking familiar archetypes and turning it to a nice fresh spin for today. Baby Teeth is loosely based on the 1968 movie Rosemary's Baby, starring Mia Farrow and directed by Roman Polanski, about a pregnant woman who's being used by an evil cult to bear the spawn of the devil to usher in Satan's reign. Rosemary's Baby was updated in 2014 to a 2-part 4-hour television miniseries starring Zoe Saldana, who's famous for playing Gamora in Guardians of the Galaxy. So is this plagiarism on Donny Cates' part? I don't think so, but you can see how Baby Teeth is highly influenced by Rosemary's Baby. And Donny Cates has a hot hand right now, so you can't skip getting this. Before we close, let's see what Image is up to, and that's always something good. First up is Extremity number 4, and this is a very promising series with a female lead in a fantasy world with a revenge story. Every issue so far has gone to a second print, and that includes issue number 3, which is going to a second print this week as well. Next up is Paper Girls number 15. This is the other ongoing series besides Saga that Brian K. Vaughan is doing, and both are nominated for Eisners. They're so deep into the story, it's got so weird now that you might as well get a trade paperback because you're going to have no idea what the heck is going on. Next up is Reborn number 6, and this is the finale of this miniseries, which teamed up Mark Millar and Greg Capullo. This mini was pretty good, and it's worth picking up a trade paperback when they put it out. Next up is The Walking Dead 168, and it's just as good as it's ever been. It should be a monthly no-brainer pickup to get this. I'm predicting that the variant will be hot because you have a zombie that's being stabbed by the rainbow flag. The zombie could be a stand-in as a symbol for intolerance, which is being destroyed. Image is going to do a whole series of gay pride variants, so look out for them in the future. And last but not least, The Divided States of Hysteria by Howard Chalkin. He's a real comic legend. This is the story of America that is shattered by greed, racism, violence, and fear. Well, I guess this isn't dystopian, this is like right now. You know the drill. Make sure you subscribe to this channel, give it a thumbs up, and share these videos on social media so others learn about comic power. That's about it for today. Thank you for watching Wicked Wednesday, where I review all the new comic books for a new comic day. Be sure to follow my blog at comicpower.net. On social media, follow me at facebook.com/comicpower.net and comicpower-universe.tumblr.com. And don't forget twitter.com/comicpowersub. I also sell comics on eBay at this link. This is Comic Killer 72 for Comic Power saying bye-bye. And don't forget to share this video, click on subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and tell everyone you know about this channel to help it grow. Thank you for your support.